Look, I have a microphone. Oh, it's so much better. And I have a light. Is this on the right setting? Probably not. Oh, I don't have any lipstick on. Is this a good color? Probably not. Oh, I don't know why I didn't think that was gonna make it worse. Okay, and that's all that I care about that. We're feeling fresh, we're feeling springy, we're feeling like we don't care that this is supposed to be an off-the-shoulder top because it's just gonna do this anyway, so why not just accept that? And let people be who they really are. I have to go journal. Hi guys. I have another one. And of these, a video. This is going well already. Okay, friends. Buckle the fuck in because I have another thrift store book review, and this one is a doozy, my friends. I've had this little puppy sleeping safe and sound on my bookshelf since I bought it in November, which is now last year. So that's fun. I should say I got it at the Iliad bookstore in North Hollywood. Fabulous bookstore, very recommended. Lots of cats, and nobody talks to you, so it's great. I adore it. And I know it's not exactly a thrift store, but I did buy this book for $2.50. I'm pretty sure it was used, so still falls within the category in general. Thrift was involved. You know how in the Marie Kondo, yes, I am bringing her up again, okay, she's a very big figure in my life, or rather in the KonMari method of tidying. You hold something in your hands and you ask yourself if it sparks joy. Well, when I first laid my hand upon this book, it did not only spark joy, it sparked love, it sparked gratitude, but most importantly, it sparked church giggles in a very quiet and serious bookstore. And that's how I knew I had to have it. I can't even show you the cover yet because it's so damn delicious. I promise it's worth the wait. The title of this book is Jane and the Unpleasantness at Scargrove Manor. That's all you see on the spine, okay? And I think I was drawn in because I love a cozy English murder mystery, especially a period piece. Ooh. And there were several more of the series on the shelf next to this one, which is a huge draw for me. There's nothing more that I hate than falling in love with a character and then saying, well, you only deserved one book. Bye! It fucking sucks. However, once I picked the book up and I looked at the cover, there's one little line above the title that really captured my imagination and continues to inspire and confuse me to this day. Being the first Jane Austen mystery. I'll give you a minute because I know I needed one. So naturally, my first thought was, oh, did Jane Austen write murder mysteries? Did Jane Austen write murder mysteries? I know she had several unfinished manuscripts when she died, but I had just sort of assumed they'd be more of her typical grand, sweeping, romantic masterpieces. Not a distant ancestor to CSI Miami. But after the first page, things really take a turn. So we think we've got it solved, right? We think we've got this mystery solved. Well, to continue making our way down the front cover of the book, it then reads, by Stephanie Barron. Oh, and also, art. Hello. She loves it. Look, I'm not knocking anybody's artistic skills. I'm just saying, Was this the right choice for the cover of a book? Was it? Was it? By Stephanie Barron. You'll notice that none of those words are Jane or Austen. There's also a quote from USA Today on the cover where they compare Jane Austen to Columbo. And I'm just so sad that I was not able to cite that quote in my 11th grade paper on persuasion. Oh my God. I'm just saying I think it would have backed up a lot of my points. I was ahead of my time with that paper. Look, I will come back to the myth, the mystery, the legend that is Stephanie herself later on. You know, I really thought that seeing an author's name on this book would make things less confusing. I thought all my questions would be answered. I thought perhaps this clue meant that this book was some sort of high-quality Pride and Prejudice fan fiction that had somehow made it to print without having to change the characters' names, like a licensed Twilight version of 50 Shades of Grey. But then I turned the book over and I read the blurb. For everyone who loves Jane Austen, a marvelously entertaining new series that turns the incomparable author into an extraordinary sleuth. So, this real-life book, which I hold in my real-life human flesh hands, was approved by real-life publishers. And it's a murder mystery novel where the author, Jane Austen, who was also at one point a real-life human, joins the ranks of Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. And y'all, I forgot, there's a whole series of these books, a whole series where a real person is written to be a pretend investigator. Like, what if somebody just wrote a series of books where J.K. Rowling was a cop? Or R.L. Stein worked at a bank? Or what if, Stephen King was a kindergarten teacher? Why not, right? There's no limits on what you're allowed to do with a person's life. Especially not once they're dead. So why not? There's a whole series of books about Jane Austen, the author, who died in 1817, who was a real author, who wrote real books about fake people. But this is a real book about a real person doing fake things. This is a mystery. How did this happen? Who allowed this? This is why I didn't even think about reading this book for several months. I was so consumed by the cloud of confusion that I couldn't even think about actually opening it and trying to read it. How does one read an enigma? How does one read a dream? I mean, the cover alone had rocked me to my core, and I needed to let that information settle in before I tried to actually do something as insane as read the book. Yeah, I'm just gonna read the book. There was yet another stumbling block when I began to read the book, however, in the form of the author's foreword. Now, let me just put this out there. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the world of fan fiction, which is works written about existing works, generally by fans, there are several things that are associated with works of fan fiction, and one of these tropes is known as the author's note. which is an unasked for personal diatribe written by the author before the actual work begins. I can say this because I wrote a lot of fan fiction in middle school because boys were very attracted to me and I was very cool. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm still not convinced that this book isn't just published fan fiction. Here we go. She begins with a very dry, to be honest, story about her friends renovating their basement in their giant inherited family house in Baltimore, I guess. They find a box of old papers. She comes over to help them look through the old papers. And if you've got an eye for storytelling, you might be able to see where this is going. I know I sure didn't. To quote, "For what we found that day was no less than an entire series of manuscripts we believed had been written by Jane Austen." So, what Stephanie is telling us here is that Jane Austen herself wrote these stories about how she, in real life, had solved real-life murders, had turned them into manuscripts, just for fun, to send to her nieces, one of whom happened to live in Stephanie's weird friend's house in Baltimore. And she found these manuscripts, which would be huge, right? Unfinished Jane Austen manuscripts. And all the historical and literary people just went, finders keepers, and let her edit them. For a brief moment, I thought, well, truth is often stranger than fiction, right? This first book was published in 1995, so I was a year old at that point. It's feasible that I could have missed what was surely a worldwide phenomenon that had most absolutely taken the world by storm, the publishing of several unfinished, unknown, unheard of Jane Austen murder mysteries. And especially because they were found in America, of all places. And especially because they were detective novels that revealed that Jane Austen was a brilliant detective, of all things. At the very least, I had to have missed out on some primo Murder, She Wrote puns. On the other hand, I consider myself a bit of a sleuth as well. And something smelled fishy here. After years and years and years of loving the movie, I finally sat down to read The Princess Bride, Exhibit A. Those of you who have also read this fantastic book may remember that there's also a foreword. An intensely hilarious foreword, one might say, where William Goldman discusses how the book you're about to read is an abridged version, a just the good parts version, if you will, of a classic fairy tale from his father's homeland. And most of all, you will remember that this foreword is complete bullshit. And of course, the entire thing is out of his imagination alone. The two forewords seem very similar, no? The reveal of the obscure source material to the backstory about the real author. At least in this case, the stuff about the author's life is Austen's actual life story, whereas Goldman's was all bunk. I got through about 2 pages of this before I decided to, needed deep down in my bones, to Google it. I haven't even dipped my toes in the actual novel yet, and already this mystery has more twists and turns than a goddamn corn maze. When you Google Miss Stephanie Barron, this lovely lady shows up on the first page of results. Those of you with an eagle eye will notice that she is not labeled as Stephanie Barron. She's labeled as Francine Matthews. And upon opening the Wikipedia article on Miss Matthews, Wikipedia says that Francine Matthews is an American writer of mystery. Well, I could have told you that. And spy fiction, who also writes historical mysteries under the name Stephanie Barron. Okay. So, this bitch writes a series as Jane Austen under a nom de plume. She is literally under 2 levels of bullshit before you get to her real identity. She's like a supervillain where her secret identity is like being hidden from the public. I've never seen the movie, but if this isn't what Inception is about, I will be very surprised. So it turns out that Stephanie, who you may remember is Francine's Sasha Fierce, has her own website because why the fuck not? Life really is just a free-for-all, huh guys? It turns out she's written 13 of these Jane Austen body snatcher books. And one of them is literally called The Canterbury Tale, because I guess infringing on one famous English author's life story just wasn't enough for Catfish McGee over here. Okay, I will give her this. In a section on the website entitled Detective Jane Austen, she does admit that the books are fictional. But she also says that she wrote the first one when she was pregnant, and one of her symptoms during that pregnancy was hallucination. You don't say. More specifically, hallucinating that she was channeling Jane Austen, like the spirit of Jane Austen. Oh my god, take a shot every time I say Jane Austen. Jesus Christ. Anyway, this is actually really sweet because she talks about doing a lot of research on Jane Austen's life and how basically the more she dug into who she was as a person, the more she fell in love with this person. It also talks about how the reaction to the first novel was a little mixed, mostly because everyone kind of did what I just did. They thought it was crazy and maybe a little money hungry. Or they just ignored her actual work altogether. The more I read about this woman, the more I really like her. Whatever her name is. Like, I'm not going to take back any of what I just said, because obviously it all works on some level, right? I mean, I bought the book because it intrigued me immensely. Also, I think like a good amount of it was funny enough that I'm not going to let good content go to waste. It seems to me that a lot of books like this, although I can't imagine what could even compare. Most of the times, they do end up being a cash grab because there's no heart in it. It sounds to me like Francine or Stephanie or whatever she's going by these days genuinely loves Jane Austen. And like many of us, she wanted more of her content. Which I guess in a way does make it fan fiction, but what can I say? I like fan fiction. And this one actually had an editor, so it means the grammar won't be truly heinous. And again, I can say that because I wrote some fan fiction with some heinous grammar. Whoops. Now, I've spent long enough talking about the lore around the book. Let's take a look at the actual book. Why don't we? Oh wow, she really studied how Jane Austen wrote. That's obvious. Haven't seen that word in a while. She really did capture the feeling of reading a Jane Austen novel. I'm definitely feeling a little overwhelmed, which is how I feel a lot of the time. So that's not really unusual. Ooh, wow, it's a long book, huh? What's that? Oh, wow. Yep, we're into 3, yeah. You know, I kind of have a headache, actually. Look, you can't say I didn't try, okay? Subscribe.